All right, guys. So I am so pumped, so completely pumped. First off, my name is Rachel Feldman, and every time I've had this amazing woman, Lisa Fraley, legal and health coach, um, I just feel like we are so honored because if you guys know Lisa, book, podcast, busy woman, I mean, everything. So for her to take time out and talk about protecting your business, because this conversation needs to always be had. And I can't tell you how many people tag me, ask me questions. So when you said yes to the dress, I was like,
I
so
know.
introduce yourself.
So thank you, Rachel. I am Lisa Fraley, and I am trained as a health coach. Actually graduated from IIN back in 2012, and also an attorney, a former healthcare attorney in a large firm who, for the past, I think it's been like 5.5 years now, have been helping health coaches and online entrepreneurs get legal protections in place and understand how to navigate being a health coach, no matter where you're located. This is an area that I help people with a lot, and there's so many questions. So I'm so excited that we are here today doing this, and thank you for having me.
All right, so we're going to dive in. I feel like, let's go after some of the common questions.
Yeah, totally.
Because the questions that I get tagged in all the time is, let's even just start the most basic. Do I need liability? Do I need, what contracts do I need on my site? So let's even go foundational, as if we're building a business before we've even taken the step out of school.
Well, it's so funny that you said that, because this is exactly what I wrote about in my book, which is called Easy Legal Steps That Are Also Good for Your Soul. And as we go forward, I should mention that the reason why I call them that is because I align legal steps with the chakras in the body. Because law actually protects you in practical ways to cover your buns, just like you're referring to, Rachel, about what steps do you need to get protected as you're starting a business. It can feel scary. It can feel overwhelming. And people don't always know where to go for a lawyer who understands what they do. And also energetically, it's amazing how many of my hundreds and hundreds of clients have said that they have shifted after they take legal steps. Their energy shifts to a different place because they feel that much more confident and empowered and safe in their business. So that's why I do this work. I have this one little hair that's driving me crazy right here. Sorry. That's why I do this work. And so I do have to say, I have to have my own little disclaimer here that what we're talking about is education and information that obviously, as we go forward and talk about what you need in your business and how things work, each person's business is different. So you always want to make sure you're talking with a lawyer who gets your business, who understands where you are. But this is to just empower you and give you some information. So foundationally, when you talk about starting your business, there's usually 2 steps I say that most people need right off the bat. One is if you're starting to work with clients one-on-one, which is how most people start, right? You want to have a client agreement, a really solid written client agreement. Why? Because it helps you put everything in writing that you are providing in your program and that they're receiving, and the payment that they're going to pay to you. This is something that people all the time think is not that big of a deal. Right? They think, well, I'm a loving health coach. I don't want to, put some negative document in front of people. I just had a great discovery call. It's warm. It's fun. I feel good. And now I'm like, here's a legal document. So that's normal to feel that way, right? So if anyone's feeling that way, it's totally normal. You don't want to turn into some scary legal monster, right? But
what I was going to ask you, and I'm sorry, tell me if you need me to just be quiet.
No, you're good. I was going to say, you just do need to protect your income and protect yourself with the contract. Yeah, go ahead.
Is that how, I felt the same way. I was like, if I put this contract in front with all this stuff, they're going to feel freaked out. Freaked out was how and not even about we had a really loving, I felt like we connected and here, same kind of verbiage. But what do you suggest? And I talk about this a lot. I talk about why I stopped doing health histories, especially ones that are 60 minutes. How it's really difficult, not in past like 15 or 20, to get into real specific logistics, which a lot of people start asking.
Yes.
But I want to, before we even get into like some nitty grittier kind of stuff, what do you suggest to kind of make a coach feel at ease in delivering that? I mean, there's one thing to have it, which we know we can get, but how can they make it so that it isn't this long contracts, but actually even before they start getting into what they feel could be a potential conversation to protect themselves, when do you suggest that they actually give this to somebody?
Okay, so the contract is actually designed to be used when you're signing someone up as a client. Okay, so when you get to that point where you are offering your program, or you're letting people know how they can work with you, and you're talking about what's included in your program and the price of your program and how they will have calls with you or whatever it is that you're offering to them, this is when you want them to sign the contract, when they're also making their first payment, whether they pay in full or whether they pay installment, and before you have your first call with them, right? Because why is that? Because a lot of times people will if you don't get a signed contract back, sometimes coaches will go ahead with that first call, and it's really hard to get it back after you have that call. So I actually encourage you to say, hey, you can make it part of your enrollment process. Just like step 1, you make your payment. Step 2, you get this contract back to me. Step 3, you schedule your first call, like whatever. Step 4, you receive this.
Have a beautiful day. And
yeah, like, it doesn't have to be, I know how it can feel really scary and uncomfortable at first. You can just feel like it's out of your comfort zone. You don't want to be a yucky lawyer, right? You want to come from a place of love and support and care for your client. But this is actually taking care of them. This is part of taking care of them. And it's also part of you showing up as the health coach leader of your business. So by being clear about what it is that you're giving in your program, when their payments are due, what happens if they ask for a refund, all these things that cause them stress and confusion, you actually can get that ironed out in your document in advance, and it can feel like a really good thing to give to them. It doesn't have to.
I love that you said at payment, because I would have never even thought of that. And I just want, for coaches who are thinking like, how do I do this? One, if you do your payment like in 17 hats, set up an automation. It's very simple.
Yeah, you can.
If you do it in Acuity, set up an automation, meaning to trigger that email. Or
yes, that's right.
Said in this different language of being like, hey, you know what? Look, you and I are going to have a great relationship.
Yeah.
And this, and this is where I got to, because I realized this was my own fear. If I said to somebody, look, this sets some really cool boundaries for both of us. Like, you know what you're getting. I know what I'm getting. So now we can just flow.
Yeah. So how did you tell people, Rachel? I'd love for you to share. Like, how did you tell people it was safe and you felt comfortable?
I didn't in the beginning. And that's why I asked that question, because I was petrified that somebody was going to be like, oh, that's so weird. That's like, you just had this great talk with me and I just shared like a lot of my personal life and you're hitting me with this contract.
Yeah.
But then I started waking up to protecting my business like an entrepreneur, not an empath, not a feeler,
right?
Not an overthinker, because in commercial real estate, which I was in, or any other profession, one would not question this. Even you go to a gym, you sign a liability.
Totally.
Constantly we do this. So I just had to be like, you know what? I can say to that person, hey, just like you said, like, I'm going to send you this. And this also, it protects you and I to have a really amazing relationship.
Exactly. And it puts you in a position of feeling good, and it puts them in a position of feeling good. And if they do question, like, what is her refund policy? Or if they think they want, that you have this document to fall back on that spells it all out. So when you think of all these other businesses that use written client agreements, and by the way, disclaimer language, at least in the ones that I draft, is included in the client agreement. You don't need a separate disclaimer for them to sign. It's in the client agreement. And this actually should give them comfort. And the more that you use it, the more that you feel comfortable with it, the more the client feels comfortable with it too, because they're looking to you to see how to react. So if you're like, oh, well, of course, that a lot of times, it's uncomfortable to start asking for money when you haven't asked for money before. This is the same thing. You have to get through that if you want to have a business. And this is just something that you do as a natural part of enrolling a client.
So we have a client agreement.
We don't see it as anything other than just the step of your process.
And for health coaches, and again, I know this is just our conversation of talk. Like, I know that for health coaches similar to myself, or those that attract somebody who's not just looking for information on a flaxseed, or that they want to add a superfood to their life, is there an additional contract? Because what I started to see, and again, one of the reasons I switched and moved away from a 16-minute health history is I felt like at that point we were diving into a document that was opening up the door for many questions that were going to put me in a situation prior to contract signing
that's right,
healthy for my business.
Yes, good point, Rachel, because it's natural when you're going through a health history for them to be like, well, let me tell you all about my diabetes, or let me tell you all, what should I eat for that? Or they can't help themselves. And most of us who are health coaches, we have so much knowledge and information that it's really hard for the health coach not to share that information. You just naturally feel like you just want to give, you just want to share, you just want to educate. So getting the client agreement first just keeps everything clean and tidy and keeps everything in a space that's safer. So start with that to protect your income and to protect your boundaries.
And I think I will add just a point on how I handled it is that this is where I love that Lisa aligns like with the chakras. I always say to anybody, like, you have to listen to your gut. Like, if you feel that this conversation is just going in different places, I always, in every strategy call, because when I contacted like a nutcase, which is okay, I can say I contact like a nutcase, the Department of Health from my state, I was like, I'm confused on some of the laws for being a coach in Florida. And what they even suggested to me is, look, on the front of your site, have that mini disclaimer. So if you guys go to my site, you'll see on the front of my site, says, I am not here to diagnose, treat, blah, 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 a little small one. Yeah. And I would even on that strategy call say, look, I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a registered dietitian. I'm not a doctor. I would give, just like Lisa gave in the beginning, a mini disclaimer. And what I always felt that if somebody was not willing to sign that contract at any point that my mouth said, I think it would be good for us to just move to this next place and see where the door opens after that, they weren't really either, one, ready to really commit to being coached, two, they weren't a good fit for me, and three, they probably would have taken me out of my frickin' scope.
And I love the fact that you talk about listening to your gut, because I do align this client agreement with your sacral chakra, which is the second chakra where your hips are, where all the good stuff lives, because that is an area, naturally, part of our gut at least is located there. And it also helps people. This is an area aligned with abundance and with money and with boundaries. So that's the perfect place energetically. If you're feeling it, literally feeling in your gut, that, as Rachel, you just said, that was brilliant. Like that, then that's a good sign to you to know that you want to tighten up that boundary and get your written document in place, and make sure you have it reviewed by a lawyer, and clearly by a lawyer who understands health coaches, but make sure you have it reviewed by a lawyer too, because sometimes people will get templates from people, or everyone's well-intentioned, right? But if it hasn't, it may not suit your business specifically. Everyone's businesses are slightly different. So you do want to make sure you have it reviewed, at least by a lawyer, if not getting one from a lawyer. And then that way you can feel more confident knowing that you are being protected.
And now you're doing the right thing. I mean, I think so. This is what I get tagged or personal messaged or emailed or called constantly by coaches saying, I know you built a business. And some people agree that there are different color states. some people feel like, oh, I'm just going to coach no matter what. I've heard this. Like, I'm not nervous. And I'm like, what I would be nervous as an entrepreneur is if I wasn't being smart about the steps that any business person was taking. So
That's
we
right.
have client agreement.
Yep. The second one I would say is that if you have a website, you need a website disclaimer. Okay. Now, Rachel mentioned what I call a mini disclaimer. That's what I call the little tiny disclaimer that you can have on your site, but you really need a bigger, longer, stronger, several page long disclaimer for your website, which is telling people that when they show up on your website, that the information that they're looking at is really just content and articles and information to help you, but it's not medical advice. You're not a doctor. It's just there to guide them. And people might say, well, of course, if people come to your website, they should know that they're not getting advice, but they actually don't know that. They know you're a health coach. They know that you've been trained. They know that you know what you're talking about, and they trust that you know what you're talking about. And so you have the obligation as the business owner to tell them that this is information to help you, but you still need to work with your own medical team, your own medical practitioners about your own situation before you read anything in my blog or look at any of my articles and apply that to your life. So that website disclaimer, it's language that makes it clear on your website, but also for you, it's really grounding. And that I align it with the root chakra. We could have started with that one, but the root chakra, because you have some language on your website, the base level of language to protect yourself when you're putting yourself on your website for the first time, which can feel terrifying. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to even add to that. So again, if you're like, what is this color state that we keep talking about? You can go to nutritionadvocacy.org and you can see where you fall, what color. This is for the United States. If you're in Europe, for example, I know Germany has very specific laws on what you can and cannot put on your site. And the same applies for some other countries. So please take the time to contact, your Department of Health or the Providence that you live in. But for me in Florida, I moved from a green state in Philadelphia. I did not know about some of these laws, and I didn't know how they would apply to me until I started. And I'm just going to say this to you guys, because everyone since this one coach had gotten in trouble for saying some certain things that she wasn't aware of have been contacting me. So the thing is, this is not me or Lisa telling you do this or do that. But what you do need to understand is when somebody comes to your site, there is information, even if you always speak like I do. You'll hear me, or you go to old live streams when I was, coaching in wellness, I would say, this is what has worked for me. This is what I do. But the moment somebody comes to your site or a blog or Instagram or Facebook, it needs to be linked back to a home somewhere that has this disclaimer. Because if something does, or if you get reported by somebody, because the Department of State is not out there stalking websites, you would get reported by somebody who feels you are acting outside of your scope. Hence, bringing back to why the client agreement is so vital, because if somebody is reporting you, most often, probably the person who's investigating you isn't necessarily going to sign a contract that holds them in a legal position. And also, you're just protecting and being smart as a normal business person. So the second part is the disclaimer is cement. You're, like you said, I'm looking at, like, we're building a home. We put in the dirt, the cement.
For real estate,
And so the next.
And I talk about building a strong legal foundation to hold and support your business.
So the next process is you have the disclaimer. That is like, I look at this as, this is, like you said, grounding, but it's also the declaration.
It is.
That's your declaration. You're saying, boom, this is what I can do. This is what I can't.
That's right.
Out, da, 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 da.
It is. It's a declaration of, this is what I'm doing. This is who I am. This is my role. This is what I'm not doing. This is what I am doing. And it not only is it a declaration to the people visiting your website, but it's a declaration of you to you also, to know that you're very squarely clear about what it is that you're doing and what it is you're not doing. Because here's what happens when it comes to the law. The law is, I love it. I mean, it's an amazing tool. It sounds crazy to say I love it, but I am a lawyer. But I will say, what I love about it is that it's an amazing tool to actually help you get clarity, help you stand taller and feel more in your power and feel more centered as a business owner. Because as women, you know, a lot of times we have to take the steps to show the world that you have a real business, to show the world that you have professionalism and credibility. And unfortunately, sometimes people question that when we're a small business, our kitchen table or in our guest room or our home office. And, you know, the world takes us seriously, for better or for worse, the more that we take ourselves seriously. And one of the ways that we do that is by using legal documents in place, building the solid foundation. Like Rachel was also saying, you know, building your solid foundation of your house so that you can go ahead and build your house on top of that. The legal part is what all businesses do or should do. So you're not also acting differently than any other business. It's not making it weird.
Keep thinking about, you know, when you go to one of my favorite places, but I rarely get to it anymore, it's Flywheel. You walk right in, or a gym, and you sign a contract. You sign a waiver, you sign a disclaimer. I mean, you go to any CrossFit, or when I worked in a lot of gyms, well, you sign something that says, if I get hurt, I'm not suing you.
Exactly. And we just put this in the client agreement and then on the website disclaimer for the website, because when it's in the client agreement, for example, it's also there with everything else. You don't have to give your clients like 29 pieces of paper. It's just one document where everything is listed. And that's even, it does need to have several pages. Like, don't be scared of the length of it. Sometimes people are like, I just want to give like 2 pages. And of course, all the lawyers are like, you can, it's your choice. And it probably may not have all the language you need in it in such a short space. But it would be no different than if your client was like, just tell me what to do to be vegan. And you give them like a checklist. And then is that really telling them everything they need to know to be vegan? Not really. So it's the same kind of concept. Like, you're not covering all your bases there.
And I just want to say to you guys that, you know, for some of you that are like, I don't have a website, go to Squarespace, go to Wix, like put something together, because you start creating sub-pages on ClickFunnels or lead pages, and maybe some of you aren't in the tech, like, oh, and all these words that I'm saying are totally new, but you can use this. Once you have that on your site, you can feed this anywhere at the bottom of a sales page, boom, here to read my disclaimer, and it feeds them back. So that becomes what I call real estate for somebody to really understand where you are, and especially whether it's one-on-one or group coaching. That we're about to get the terms and conditions. That disclaimer and the terms and conditions, even if you're using PayPal, Invoice, or Stripe, that link in that little box that says note can always feed back in your documents. This can feed back. So I want you to look at this as an investment in building a fruitful business, and one that doesn't like bite you in the tuchus, you know, one morning.
Exactly. No biting in the tuchus. No biting in the tuchus.
As a Jewish grandma would say.
I love that. I love it. So well, that's what it is. I always say cover your buns, but it's the same thing as don't get bitten in your tuchus. It's the same thing. And that's where part of our comfort as we grow in our business, you feel more comfortable like exhaling, like, you feel more comfortable expanding and growing and being creative when you feel like you have some protection. None of us do anything when we feel like we're scared. We just stay scared like this. We don't grow and expand. So yeah, absolutely. We're all about protecting the tuchus. And by the way, legal documents are not like, first of all, they're not one size fits all for sure. Second of all, they're not like the be all end all either, right? You still have to, you know, make sure that you have a lawyer that you're working with. You have to make sure that, you know, they get tightened up as they go. Your boundaries sometimes shift and change as you go, and you need to go back in and tweak those legal documents as you grow in your business. But it certainly is one of the best, strongest steps to help you get going as a business owner.
And I just want to even add to that, because I think when we think, oh, I'm adding a legal document, this gives permission to go outside of your scope. So this is a really important thing. Instead of saying, red state, orange state, yellow, green, and talking about a rainbow constantly. Let's just start talking about within scope, with out of scope.
Okay, well, here's where it gets a little tricky. Like the one thing about the red state, whether you like that or not, or whether you believe in it or not, it is just so everyone knows what we're talking about. Obviously, the Center for Nutrition Advocacy is an organization that monitors state legislation, state laws, and state proposed laws. And basically what it tries to do in a pictorial way, actually quite brilliantly, is indicate which states are more restrictive around nutrition laws and which states are more lenient. Right? And so a lot of people are visual, so it helps you at least just see these laws are more restrictive, these laws are more open, you have more leeway as a non-registered dietitian, or in some cases a non-licensed nutritionist. So that website, I think, can be helpful for people as a resource to know how to find their state law and to see what's going on. So here's the deal that I think a lot of people don't understand.
Let me just clear, so maybe it wasn't to take away from the red and orange. What I see a lot of people, even in a green state, doing is working outside of their scope.
Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So when Rachel says working outside of your scope, what does that mean? What is the health coach's scope of practice? So what is interesting is that at least right now, affirmatively, as we say in law, in the legislation, there's no, how do I say it? The laws have not yet defined specifically, this is what a health coach is in this state, and this is what a health coach can do in this state, A, B, C, D, E. Like the law does not say that. So what happens is that health coaches are in a position, just like other non-licensed professionals, to make sure you're not violating laws that exist for other professions, right? So the health coach's scope of practice is really not spelled out by law yet. I'm sure it will be at some point. But what it means is that the health coach has to make sure you're aware of other laws that exist that you're not violating. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that, for example, in many states, laws are on the books about what a registered dietitian can do or what a licensed nutritionist can do. And their scope of practice is defined for the registered dietitian. Here's how you become a registered dietitian. Here's what you can do as a registered dietitian. Here's what it means to practice dietetics. This is what it says. So you have to look at, this is what they're allowed to do because they have a license, which means that if you don't have this license, you're not allowed to do that, okay? Just like with doctors, there's laws about here's what it means to be a doctor. Here's what's considered medical advice. Here's what doctors are allowed to do. So if you're not a doctor, you, no matter who you are, can't do that, right? That's the thing why it's so tricky for health coaches to figure out what their scope of practice is, because it's not like we just have one definition for everyone. Here's what you can do. Now, I will say this. In every state in the country, health coaching is legal. You're allowed to be a health coach, of course. You can practice as a health coach, of course. But what it comes down to is what are the kinds of things that you can do as a health coach. That's where you want to make sure that you are aware of the laws in your state. And then, of course, each person decides what they do on their own. Some people completely disregard the law. Some people follow the law to a T. That's your decision. But what I view my role as a lawyer who's been doing this work for over 5 years is to educate you as to how to find out what the law says. So then you're aware, and then you can make your own decision about what feels right to you. Obviously, as a lawyer, I cannot tell you to violate the law. That is not, I'm not allowed to do that. And so, but you run your own business and you make your own decisions. And I just want you to know what the law is and you know what it says, just like Rachel does, so that you aren't getting yourself into trouble and getting your tuchus in trouble.
And so putting the disclaimer, moving to a terms and conditions on the site so that it really helps to explain the programs. So the 4 basic is client agreement, disclaimer.
Well, okay. So the third one that we just talked about was knowing about your state laws. So first we have, your client agreement, your website disclaimer. Then you do want to know, like when we talk about your website disclaimer tells people about what you're doing, kind of what you're not doing. You want to make sure that you know your state laws. So how do you find out what your state laws are? again. We just said you're allowed to be a health coach in every state. And, it's a new profession that's expanding so rapidly. It's incredible. And there's so many wonderful people out there actually working to try to get the laws changed in certain states to make it more easy to practice as a health coach, more with doing all sorts of things. But in some states, certain things are only allowed to be done by a registered dietitian, or they're only allowed to be done by a doctor by statute. Like, it's written in the law. No one's making this up. It's in the law. This is what it is. So sometimes it does come down to how the law is interpreted, right? How is that interpretation? And sometimes that requires you working with a local lawyer to help see how that law has been interpreted in your state, or see how terms have been defined in your state, because it's not a super simple thing. Like, not going to lie, it's not a super simple thing to figure out. But what we're trying to do is help to educate you so that you know what to do, so that you can find this out for the laws in your state. So the third thing is really getting clear and understanding what registered dietitians are allowed to do, what doctors are allowed to do, what other licensed professions are allowed to do, and making sure you're not doing what's only reserved to be allowed for those professions to do. That's what it comes down to.
And we've even talked solution before. Like, if you are in a state that is not as lenient,
yes,
what are some of the solutions? And that's what I was alluding to earlier with, get really clear on the health history versus strategy session. Get really clear on even what Lisa said, like, it's really easy when you're talking one-on-one to somebody. So I always say, either move to kind of more of an online program group setting, or even an offline group setting, shopping tours, like all these things. What I know I was told very clearly, and this is what I say to every coach, is like, you can't talk carbs, you can't talk fats, you can't talk sugars, you can't talk a lot of things that come naturally. And this is not necessarily, you're like, well, that's coaching. But trust me, I used to get so many people say, can I have this protein? And I would say, that's for my fitness pal, because each one of us, and what I think the beauty of a coach is that there isn't this one diet. And there isn't this one way of eating. There isn't this amount of protein for one. There are fruitarians, we know. There are paleo, vegan, vegetarian, raw, 90-10. I mean,
exactly.
The list goes on. So when you're coaching in the way that I started to solve this problem of what do I actually say then, is that when I say jump out of my scope, I, just like Lisa did, went and contacted Department of Health, looked at the nutritionadvocacy.org. Number 3, I also started to train myself to think in a different way. That I didn't need to come in and go into those nitty gritty, that I could easily say, you know what, you're coming to me with these health issues. I would suggest, even before you come to me, that you see this doctor, or, or that you go see your doctor, or I could speak to somebody that I know that who would love to see you. Then we can work together.
And one of the things I love about you, Rachel, is that you are so clear. Like, you look at the example Rachel set of getting aware of what her state law is and what she's allowed to do, and then altering what she does based upon what fits into the law. That's exactly what we're trying to help you do for yourself, because each state is different. So even if someone else is in a red state, your state law might be slightly different. Or if someone's in a green state, which is really lenient, yours still might be slightly different. And the other thing about the state law is that it changes all the time. Like, states have changed colors in recent years. They've gone from green to yellow, or from orange to red, or red to orange. Like, the law is not just permanent, just like our bodies, right? Our bodies are always changing. The law is also changing frequently. So the goal is for you to feel really empowered to know, like Rachel said, what are some things that are safer for you to do? And in all states, you can provide education and information. Okay, you can provide education and information, but the trick is making sure that it doesn't cross over into giving individualized nutrition advice, or talking about, Rachel said in her state, she can't talk about carbs and protein and fat and things like that. And she refers all her clients to MyFitnessPal. So she's still being a health coach. She's still helping her clients. She's just talking to them about education and information and supporting them emotionally, but referring them to other products and things that can actually help them break down the nutrition, so she's not personally
and
figuring out what that person needs to do.
So this, and I know because I can even hear like a coach being like, so wait, that means I'm not allowed to talk food. This is where it gets tricky. And again, I'll take responsibility for saying this because I went through this. So I don't want you guys to think like Lisa's telling you what to do per se, is that I still gave like programs that I created.
Yeah.
But I didn't sit there. If somebody said, I have candida, this is for example, if I have candida, because that was like, part of my story, I'd be like, it's not, I can't dive in and be like, you need to take this, and this. What I would do is say, cool. Okay. So go and work with your doctor, like get that stuff worked out. And that was one of the reasons that I looked at my programs as like clean slate starts. Because I do feel unless you have somebody with issues like myself or maybe a mystery illness that's happening, the majority of the world needs to change about 5 things. And I learned really fast in my business when I got through, like, am I going to be able to coach? I feel, nervous. I feel scared. I feel this, to realize that, like, the majority of the world was eating gluten. The majority of the world was eating like foods, and I would talk and say, per the work of Donna Gates. Here, go to Body Ecology site. Per the work of Mark Hyman, per the work of Joel Furman, per the work. And you still hear me say that. I'll be going like this. I'll be like, per the work of, Ron from Chinese Herbalist at blah, 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 blah. Or even when I talk about probiotics, and you guys have maybe seen this on my personal page, where people will start asking me, I'll even say, look, per the work of Mark Hyman, who talks about insulin resistance.
Well, and that's the other thing is basically, why can Mark Hyman write a book and do webinars about insulin resistance? Well, first of all, he's telling everyone the same thing about insulin resistance. That's education. That's information. He's not sitting down and going, okay, Susie, so tell me what's happening in your body after you eat your breakfast. Like, he's not doing that. He is giving everyone the same information. And in some states, in yellow and green states, for the most part, make sure you double check. But yes, you can say, Susie, tell me how you felt after you ate your breakfast. For the most part, in red and orange states, it can potentially violate the dietetics law that says only dietitians can do individual nutrition assessment or can talk to them about recommendations for their specific body.
Right. So that's where I want you guys to hear, because the 25 to 100, I mean, seriously, I can't figure out the number in the last few months that have tagged me.
Oh, yeah. I get tagged all the time too. I get it.
So the part is that you can have a conversation. I mean, at least I had a conversation of like, how do you feel? But if somebody says, I really felt a little lightheaded, you can't say, why don't you reduce your sugars? Or how much sugar was on what you ate? That is where, and I talk about retraining my brain on how I thought about my business. It wasn't about stopping and going, I can't do this business. At that moment, when I found out the laws and knew what the repercussions would be for my business to not be in alignment, it's a key word, in alignment, I made unbelievable collaborations locally. Like, in this at a time,
refer them out to their doctors to go see their
doctor,
doctor,
to people, but
their chiropractor or their whoever, right? Yeah, that's great, or naturopath or whomever.
And just to make it simple, guys, so that when you're talking, like, this is where Lisa was saying it's easy in one-on-one. It's that if you are in one-on-one, you can say, look, we're going to talk about what's happening. We're going to talk about what's happening in your body. Awesome that you kept this food diary. I would say, this is your health blueprint. This is for you to have the aha moment, because you will. When you're like going, woo, I wrote that down. It didn't feel great. Or the next day I did feel great. What was that aha moment that happened for you?
For you. And the trick is, in those red and orange states, in some states, you can't review that diary legally. You aren't to review their diary. It's for them to keep the diary for themselves. You can teach them how to keep their own diary, but you're not to review it, because then you'd be receiving individualized nutrition information. And so there's very fine lines here. And what's important is that, especially if you're starting out, one of the things I actually love, and she didn't tell me to say this, is that Rachel has so many done for you programs. Like I said, she didn't tell me to say this, that actually you can use in many ways because it's all already designed for you. There's nothing personalized about it. You're educating people and taking them through a program where they can learn how to eat certain ways or do certain things to change their life and their lifestyle. And it doesn't put you in a position of wondering, like, is this the individualized nutrition advice? Like, you can talk to them about the material and just be aware that it's so tempting to like want to just tell them what to do. But we have to really step back as health coaches and respect what where the lines are drawn. And again, you decide what's right for you, but we're just educating you as to where the lines are drawn and then go from there.
So another solution for a coach, and we've discussed this before, but now that we're like solution-based going down the list, could be, and we've talked about this before, is actually having a doctor or a chiropractor or somebody with a license that is permitted where they actually employ you. You can't just be working, they have to employ you. So can you give a little detail on that?
Yeah. So first of all, I love what you said a minute ago about referring people out to their medical team, right? So there's that option. Then in a lot of other states, so here's what happens. People will say, well, can I just like work with a doctor? Can I just like work with a doctor? And in some states you can. And in some states, when they say work with, it means you're your health coach with your health coaching business. They're their doctor with their doctor business. And you either use a contract between you, or as Rachel said, you can become an employee, right? You work under them. What in some states you can't do the contracting thing, because just because you're working with them doesn't mean that you're falling under their license to protect you. However, not every state, each state's different. I have to qualify this, but in many states, you can have a doctor's office or a licensed practitioner's office who is allowed to give personalized nutrition advice and RD, other people, and you can be a health coach who works on their team. Again, not every state, but many states, you can be employed by that doctor to be part of their staff or team and basically, do the work under the doctor's name with the doctor's marketing, with the doctor's name on it. And because the doctor just doesn't have time and apply all of your knowledge and help them. And then that can still improve people's lives. Again, each state's different, but the contracting thing doesn't always work in all the states, and an employment thing often does, but again, not in everyone.
And I just want to also even wrap up one more solution for you guys. And I talk about this all the time. I was scared to do groups. Groups don't have to be 50 people. They don't have to be.
No.
Group can be. And so when you're thinking about working and collaborating with practitioners, you can say to them, can we do this free educational workshop together? Or can we do this group program together? And it doesn't have to be you in a room doing one-on-one. And it also, for many of you that don't have the bandwidth to work one-on-one, this is a really nice way to extend your energy in a lot of different areas. A lot of different ways, and work with multiple people. So gyms, CrossFit place, it doesn't just have to be, it's like you can go in, and I love what Lisa said. In classes, I used to literally teach what was in the books, session by session by session. And we would just go over them because the majority
of everyone the same information.
The majority of people, or if you are working at a place, have the fitness team or have the team there and have them write the plan. So there are always a lot of solutions, guys. And this is where I want you to take in what's being said, and also to remember that I love what Lisa said is this changes all the time. Being a smart business person is literally about checking in, evaluating your website. I had to just kill a lot of YouTube videos, things that I didn't know, and things that I was saying on blogs that came from my own personal story. But again, I didn't understand the language to really speak as being a safe health coach. And this for me is, even if I lived in Philadelphia, I know many other professions, and they are monitored constantly. So they're constantly reevaluated, massage, acupuncture, everything. So don't think this is something negative. That's what I'm trying to say. It feels overwhelming. No. You take a deep breath, Om Shanti, and then go just work that biz.
figure out what you need to do in your state, and then do these things like this. What we want for you is to focus on the opportunities available to you, right? Not what you can't do. It's just like when we're telling people to add things into their diet, not what they're taking out of their diet, right? These are the concepts that we believe in health coaches, as you want to help people expand into and focus on the positive things that give them energy and nourish them and confidence and make you feel good. You can create a fabulous living as a health coach, no matter what state you're located in. It's really just getting clear about what in your state is not treading on or violating other laws, or the comfort level that you have with the risk of violating other laws, and then figuring out what feels good to you. You can do webinars and seminars, and Rachel said you can do groups and you can do
classes. I mean,
there's so much you can do.
Shopping tours, it's endless, guys. So that's what I think, having this conversation, honestly, Lisa could do a 7-day like blitz marathon talk of this. And it's still, as you see, like we're still repeating the same things. But I want you to start thinking of solutions. And for many of you, this actually will help you niche down and really get clear on like what you're meant to do, so that then you can put all that energy into like 3 things that you do really well: the webinars, master classes, the groups, instead of being in 10 different places. So look at this, actually. Find the lemonade. It's like someone goes to lemons, make lemonade. And, for a lot of coaches, I want to honor that. I felt that. I was scared. I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it. But I'll tell you, when I broke in and I broke out of the fear, because I had a fear of doing groups, I had a fear of public speaking.
Can you even believe this, everyone? I mean, look at Rachel had a fear of public speaking, and she's on Facebook Live and YouTube and like everywhere all the time.
Because I worked to get there. And that's what I want you guys to know, is that you may have to work a little to get out of your comfort zone. But this was a blessing for me, because I was tired one-on-one. I could only take so many people, and you can help more people, or just know what you can do in your one-on-one.
Exactly. And I love what you said about niching down here, because sometimes clients will say to me, or people will say to me, oh, I'm so relieved actually to know now I can just focus on this. Like, I don't have to recreate the wheel for every client. Like, some people in some more restrictive states are like, oh, thank goodness I just learned this information, because now I can really just focus over here. And then their business explodes, because that's where their energy and their heart and their time and their money goes. So this is no different than how you educate your clients as health coaches about their own bodies, which are always changing. And you know how easily they can feel overwhelmed and feel not sure and not know what to do and not know what step to take, and you are, as the coach, comfortable and confident saying, just start here, take this step, and then take this step, and then take this step. The same is true for the law. We're trying to tell you, find out here, find out what your law is, find out what it says, so you know what steps to take for yourself. Check to see if you have a client agreement, check to see if you have a website disclaimer, check to see if they've been reviewed by a lawyer who understands what you do, feel really good in alignment with them, strengthen your energetic boundaries and things, and then just go forward step by step into the legal part of your business. Just the same is true with accounting too. You have to start here with accounting, and then you move forward as your business grows. So think of this just like how you think of everything else in your life. The law isn't that different. It's here to be a tool to support you, to help you have a successful business, and to help you feel safe and secure as you do. So I'm just, Rachel, so honored and happy to be here talking about all of this with you all, because it's such an important area. And it becomes even more and more important the bigger you get.
And, and I just want to kind of like recap one thing, guys, because Lisa's been so awesome to be here for all this time. Everything that I talked about, from like paid classes, that could be online or offline. Like, for many new coaches breaking into the online space, it happen right away. And I think that's what's really hard, which a lot of you guys think it's just going to happen. Work in groups offline, like a shopping tour, all those fun things. I mean, I used to give a program, and we would do a shopping tour, and we would talk about the basics of what was in that program, and we walk around just showing people like, oh, that's that. Oh, I never even knew that.
I know, we forget. People don't know what like mangoes are. We just forget. It's crazy.
Anything, even the most basic. So, and remember, like, that information on your shopping tour that could say Dr. Axe says. What did the experts say? And this is what I started doing on everything. So I just want to remind you guys, don't think, oh my God, I can't coach, you know, offline, like all of these things. Just sit for a little and let it flow and the ideas. And you'll be like, oh my God, I don't even have enough time in the day to accomplish all the ideas I've just seriously thought up.
Exactly.
So with that being said, I want to thank Lisa. Lisa, can you tell people where to find you and information and all that?
Absolutely. So you can get free legal tips on my website at lisafraley.com. And also I have a podcast that you can listen to on iTunes or on Stitcher, I always forget that one, called Legally Enlightened. And it's basically every week a podcast in 20 minutes or less about like, when do you need an LLC or what should I trademark? Like really good snippets that you can learn about the law really quickly. I also have my book, Easy Legal Steps, that are also good for your soul, which you can just find on Amazon. And my team is always happy to have a free legal chat with you and to help you with any do-it-yourself legal templates that are on my site. So Rachel, including, by the way, I should say the client agreement and the website disclaimer. So thank you so much for having me.
We could have gone on for and we didn't even get to one of the subjects that I said we were going to get to, but I know how busy you are. Thank you so much. And guys, thank you for joining in. If you have any questions, tag me and we're here to help. Thank you, Lisa.
Lots of legal love.
Bye, guys.